Welcome to Rebuild in Notion, a new series on my YouTube channel where we try our best to rebuild features or complete apps inside of Notion. Is it necessary? Questionable. Is it a whole lot of fun? Heck yeah. Today we tackle Calendly. In case you don't know, Calendly is a booking software that allows you to easily schedule meetings. You set up your availability, sync it with your calendar, and then you get a little link. That link you can share with others who can then see your availability, pick the time slot that works for them, and after that, on meeting is automatically created and shared with both parties. So, can you do that in Notion? Let's start by creating a database for our availability. To do so, we simply type /database and we'll call this availability. And then at the same time, we can create a second database for our bookings for later. Now, in terms of the availability database, we basically in the beginning only need two properties, the name and then an actual date property that stores the time slot. Now, we can of course expand this later and add more variety, but for now, this is good. And in terms of bookings, what we need is of course the name of the person booking. Then we need their email address. So let's click on plus, add an email. And then we want to have a relation between our bookings and availability database to make sure we can later assign a certain booking to a certain availability. All right, we can leave it as is and then create it. And that's the base setup. We have to expand it later with a few backend properties, but for now, we are good to go. Next, we need to automatically create time slots during our availability. Now, we could of course go in and manually create our availability by just clicking here, saying slot 1, what time is it, and so on and so on. But that's not very scalable. So instead, we're going to use Notion's API to automate this process. And don't worry, even if you never used the API before, it's super simple because we're going to use a tool called Make. Make.com is an amazing no-code automation builder that allows us to, create these scalable processes in Notion and automate repetitive tasks. They also have an amazing free plan. I leave a link to it in the description so you can build this whole Calendly clone in Notion without having to pay for it. All right, now let's get started with this automation. This is the interface that you'll see after you sign up to Make and click on the big purple New Scenario button. And we're going to click in the middle to add our first module to it. And the first step in this scenario that will help us automatically create our availability slots is to look for tools. You can either search or if it pops up, you can already click on it. And then we want to go to the Set Multiple Variables option. Now, this will allow us to define a few parameters for our availability. The very first thing that we want to define is the duration, right? So for every time slot that people can book in our calendar, how long should that be? Now, in this case, let's actually set it to 30 minutes. So people can book in 30-minute slots, but you can pretty much put any value in there, right? 60 for a whole hour, 45, whatever floats your boat. And you could, of course, also make this more complex later down the line and add several types of time slots. But let's keep it like this and move on. The second thing that we need to define is the start time. Now, in Calendly, right, the way it works is you would go into your calendar and say, well, typically I'm available for meetings, for these type of meetings between let's say 2 and 6. That's when people should be able to book an appointment. Here, with this workaround, we need to do it slightly different. We still need to figure out, okay, what start time should someone be able to book from? So if you want to allow people to book meetings starting 9 a.m., you would put 9 in here. But let's actually go with this example, right, where you say, okay, between 2 and 6, that's when I want to schedule appointments. So I will put in 14, right? 2 p.m. as 1400. That's the start variable. It should be 14. And now the last thing that we need to, or the next thing that we need to define is the number of slots. And here we need to do a bit of math. You could also automatically calculate that based on end time, but let's actually just quickly do the mental math. So if we start at 2 and we end at 6, this means we have from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and 5 to 6, right? So that means we have 4 slots times 2 because we have 30 minutes for everything. So that means we have 8 slots available every day. So again, slots goes here, 8 goes there. And then last but not least, we just need to define something for minutes. And that one we just put to 0 for now. And this will make sense in a moment. So this is the basic setup in the beginning. And of course, you can adjust it now to whatever start time you want or to whatever duration you need. Let's click on OK to commit these variables. And then we can create our second step. Now for the second step, we want to actually go back quickly to Notion. and make sure that our first slot that we just created a sample entry in here, and let's just give it any date, doesn't matter which one, because what we'll do now in the second step is we're going to go into Notion. So we click on plus, then we search for Notion, and in Notion we want to pick for the search objects module. Now, the first thing you need to do if you use this for the first time is you need to connect your Notion workspace. So just click on Add and go through the steps to authorize your Notion workspace. I'm just going to select my sandbox here. And then it asks you for the database. Now, very importantly, during the integrating step where you authorize Notion, you need to select which pages Notion should get access to. And it needs to have access to this calendar page, right, where you have all your things. So if you didn't do that during the onboarding, don't worry. What you can do is simply go in here, click on the 3 dots, and then towards the bottom where it says connections, you want to make sure that you go on connect and then look here for make. In my case, it's labeled in Tcomart because that's from the olden days, but you want to go in here and look for make and then connect it. In that way, it has access to these databases. Now, once that's the case, you can go back here and now you can click on search, and I can search for availability, click on OK, and that should bring up the database with the ID. And all right, there we have it. Now, what I want to do is I don't need to filter in here, but I want to add a sort because we want to retrieve the last entry in our database. And that allows us that whenever we run this automation, it will, for the next ones add new time slots in the future. But we, of course, need to figure out what's the last time slot that we have in there. So to do that, we click on sort and we'll say, please sort by property field. And then as a property option, we want to pick the time slot and the direction should be descending. And we only want to retrieve one entry. That means it will always retrieve the latest entry in the whole thing. Now, in order to make sure this actually works, we can have it like this. We can click here on save and then on run once. And now this will, if we click on here, we can inspect it, right? We see we have our variables defined. And if we click on here, we see that it should find our one entry. So we can open this up and go in here and say, well, this is the slot 1. Perfect. All right. So it found the latest slot. Now with this information, we can go in and actually say, okay, based on this, what is the next time slot that should be created? And then in order to actually create several time slots, we need to add a repeater after this. So we click again on plus and then we search for repeater. And this allows us to, after this, like for every time slot that we need to create in a day, run this through. So it starts at 1 and then it will repeat until it reaches the number that we created here for our slots, right? So it basically goes from 1, 2, 3, 4 until 8. And if you change it, it of course changes the value here. All right, that's that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is later down the line, we will update some of the variables in here in the process so that they reflect the new start time and minute time. And in order to make sure we always have the latest value in here, we need to again go into tools and we need to get multiple variables this time. And we need to get our, which ones are, we need to get our start time and we need to get the minutes. Make sure that you have that matched exactly to the values that you've defined here, right? We have minutes and we have start. Perfect. So this is a bit of a complicated pre-setup, but trust me, it will make sense in a second. Let's click on plus, add another module, pick Notion, and then the create a database item option. Here, we want to make sure again we have our Notion connection and we search again for the availability database. And it's time now to create all the individual slots. In order to do so, we need to do a little bit of math, but don't worry, it's not too complicated. Under name, we will do something simple for now. We just do slot, 1 space, and then we pick the value from here. So that's the current number of the repeater. You can, of course, also put in date, the name of the workday also, but this way we have just slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's good enough for now. Now, under start time, we need to first figure out, okay, what is the next day for which we should add slots to the calendar? And remember, in our automation, we already pull in the last entry, right? The last day that we currently have in there. The next one can just be simply calculated by going here to the calendar options and then say add days. And then before the semicolon, we put under property values, time slot, the start time. And then after the semicolon, we put 1. And that means when we get the next day. All right. Now we need to copy this whole thing and cut it because we need to wrap this in a few more statements. It's a bit complicated to set up, but trust me, bear with me. It will make all sense in a moment. And of course, you can always download either the template in the description to make it a bit easier for you, or if you want to build this yourself, check out the blog post in the description where I have also all the formulas linked for you. All right, so I'm going to cut this out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to calendar and I will set the hour, right? Because we have the day now, but we need to figure out, okay, at what hour should that time slot have? So we do set hour and we paste everything that we have before the semicolon. And after the semicolon, we want to now go in and put the start value. Now, it's very important that you pick the start value that we just pulled in here and not the one from the beginning. And that's because we have to, like, after every time slot, update the start so that it pulls in the new one. And this old one will always be the same, right? So we need to pull in the new value. So let's take start here. All right. And then last but not least, we need to repeat this whole process for the minutes. So again, we take everything, we cut it, we go back here, we say set minute. We paste everything that we have before the semicolon, then after the semicolon, we paste and we take the minute value. All right. Now this takes the, go through it, right? It takes the last day, figures out the next day for which it should create an entry, and then sets the hours and the minutes for our time slot. So in case you want to start at 2:30, not at 2, make sure that you put in 30 as a minute value here at the front. Next, we need to set the end date. And for that, we will copy everything that we have here now, go to end time, and this time we need to go to add minutes, because now we will paste everything before the semicolon, and then to whatever start time we calculated, we will simply add the duration, right? So we pick our duration value. In this one, we don't pull in here again because the duration doesn't change, right? We have always the same time slot. All right. Now, very important, include time needs to be set to yes, and then we can click on OK. And now we have an automation, nearly, that will go into Notion, figure out, okay, what's the last day that we have time slots for, and then automatically fill it with the new time slots. Just one last thing that we need to do. We need to go in here and we need to make sure that we update these variables. For that, let's go here, add another module, tools, and then set multiple variables. And what we need to set is the start time, right? We need to set a new start time, and we need to set a new minutes value, minutes. All right. Very important, type that in, don't click on that, because if you click on it, you pull in the value of the variable, not the name of the variable. All right, so what should the start variable value be? Well, what we need is the hours from the end of our last time slot. So we go to calendar, we will pick format date, we will put in before the semicolon, we go in here and under time slot and end, that's the value that we need. And here we just put in 2 small h, and it will give us the hour value. And then we repeat the same here for minutes. So we go in here, format date. We need our end date here, and then 2 small m will give us the minute value. All right. Now we have the first version of this automation ready, and we can actually test it. To do so, make sure you click on save and then click on run once. And now we can go back to Notion and see whether it pulls it in correctly. And we see, okay, we have now 8 slots created, 1 through 8. And we have it starting from 2 to 2:30, then 2:30 to 3, 3 to 3:30, and so on and so on. So you see, it automatically creates now our slots. And of course, you can adjust this to whatever you need, right? If you need to change the duration, it will automatically work and adjust it. If you need to, want to have a buffer in between, you could do that by going in here and saying, right, for set multiple variables, but give me the end date, the minutes, and then add, like 30 to it. That way you have the slots always spaced out. So pretty much the sky is your limit, but the base version already is here. Now we need to do one more thing here, because of course you probably don't want to take a call every single day of the week. So in order to be able to specify it, we need to click here between Notion and the repeater and say add a router. And now we will build some logic that says, depending on the day of the week, either create bookings or create blocked time. I quickly went into the Notion database and added just a checkbox property that I called blocked. And we use this to make it a bit easier. So what we do then is we go in here and we say, please, if it's blocked, then go into Notion, still create a database item, because we still need to have an entry in there so that our logic, right, keeps then going to the next day. So let's just look for availability here. Make it out of the way. Click on OK. And then in here, for this one, we'll then simply go in there and we will, instead of calling it a slot, we'll call it blocked. So we'll say, okay, this is blocked. For the time start, we still need to add the day, right? So we figure out which day to block. So we go in here and we do the same logic as before. We say add days, and then please take the last time slot start date, and then put blocked to yes. All right. And we need to, of course, add 1 to that. Then we can click on OK. And now we have that part done. And now we only need to create the logic here. And you have 2 options. Basically, on one path, you set the logic on when it should go to that path. And then the other one, you say just, okay, if the other one doesn't go through, take this. So let's assume we want to book calls not on the weekend. So in this case, what we would do is we would go in here and say, block day, and we would say, okay, please check what day of the week we have. So in order to do that, we will go in here, and we first need to go again, as always, to next day, right? So we do add days, we take our time slot, we take start time, and we add 1 to it. We can cut the whole thing then, and then we can use the format date option. And here we paste, as usual, our values in between there. And then for the second thing, we want a small d. And a small d will give us a value from 0 to 6. 0 being Sunday and 6 being Saturday. So we can then figure out, well, is this equal to one of the days where it should be blocked? So for that, we can go numeric operator. It shouldn't book it if it's on a Sunday, so a 0. And then we can add an OR rule, and we can just duplicate the whole thing and say it shouldn't be on a Sunday, and it shouldn't be on Saturday. So 0 and 6. Let's click on OK. And then we can just go in here and say like call day, and can just say that this is the fallback route. Now, for the testing purposes, I also quickly went down and put the repeater to 1, just because we don't want to create 8 slots in every time while we test it. We can set it to our normal value later again. And then we can just see where that works. So let's go into Notion and make sure. So our last slot I now put on, let's put it on a Wednesday, right, 24th. That means if it now everything works, it should go through and should create another slot for the next day. All right, 25th, perfect. Now let's go in and change the 25th actually to Friday. So now my last one, oops, it has an end time. No, let's just go put it to Friday. Now the next one should be a Saturday, and that should be blocked. So again, we run it and we see where it goes. Perfect, it goes down to blocked, and it now blocked, and it is like just blocked time. Right, and I can run it again for Sunday, see whether that works as well in terms of the blocking. Wait a second, and it blocked as well. Perfect, now we have our 2 blocked days, and I can click again on run once, and in this case it should go up again because now it's Monday. Perfect, works like a charm. And you can adapt, of course, this logic, right? So if you don't want to have calls 5 days a week, then it's probably more efficient to go in here and say, okay, I want to have calls on Tuesday and on Thursday. So you go to us in here and say, okay, if my number of the day equals Tuesday and Thursday, then please go through here and then do the other thing as the backup route. One last step here. Let's make sure that we create our availability on bulk. Because what we do currently, right, is we do it for once a day. I went back to the repeater and I made sure that we have our slots here, and I actually dropped the slots down to 4. But it still means that we would need to have this for every day. And we don't want to do that, right? We want to have it for the week ahead or even the month ahead. Now, how can we do that? Well, simple. We just add one more repeater. So in order to do that, we will just click here, add a module. And we will get a repeater. And then we're going to drag this like clock icon, which is the first, indicates the first module of the whole automation, to the repeater. Put the repeater at the very front and say, okay, let's do that for 7 days a week, so always a week ahead. And then we connect this. And now we run this whole flow whenever we click on it 7 times. And of course, you could up that to 31, whatever number you want. But for testing purposes, let's keep it at 7. And then let's go into Notion and make sure we have one starting time entry in here. And let's take Sunday 21st. And then let's just run this once to make sure it all works properly. And ideally, if it does, we should now get our 7 entries here. So we have April 22nd from 2 to 4. We have then 23rd from 2 to 4, and so on and so on. They all come in, and then at the very end, we should get 2 blocked entries for Saturday and Sunday. Now, if you want to use Make on the free plan, that means that you actually need to run this automation manually. So I would probably recommend to up this repeater to 31, right? So that you just click once and then have a whole month of meetings booked. And that's because on the free plan of Make, you can only schedule 2 automations to run regularly. And we need those 2 automations for some other operations here. So in that case, just do it manually once a month. Otherwise, what you can do is you can go in here and say, well, schedule this on days of the week. And then, for example, on Sunday, always run it on Sunday at a specific time, and then turn it on, and then we'll automatically add new entries to your calendar. And of course, you want to make sure that you always have a bit of buffer, right? So depending on how long you want people to book in advance, you can just run this once or twice, right, to fill out a few weeks worth of slots, and then you have them in there. So you see, we have our blocked slots, we have all the other ones. Perfect. Oh, one last thing. Super sorry for this, but in the last module here to set multiple variables, we actually need to put in 2 capital H's With the small one that I had in there so far, it actually takes then, like only number values from 0 to 12. So that means if you have PM values, they turn into AM values. So make sure you have 2 large H's, and that means it's always preserved. Preserves like, goes from 1 to 23, and you have them at the right time, so you don't accidentally have meetings super early in the morning. Now, before we continue, a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Scrintal. Scrintal is a new take on visual note-taking that combines an infinite canvas with individual documents. That means it's super easy for you to get a high-level overview of everything that's going on in your workspace, while at the same time using bidirectional links to connect ideas effortlessly. I particularly recommend that you check out Scrintal if you like Notion for things like project management, organizing your tasks, or let's say replace a booking system, but not so much for note-taking, because you're not a big fan of the way that Notion has a more hierarchical structure, right? So this is a database with some notes for my setup research for YouTube, and of course I can link between different ones and I can then open them up and have their dimensions of the others, but it's different to like a visual interface like here in Scrintal. So let's just open up the board here for the research. So here I have my setup ideation, and you'll see it's just a different way of structuring your thoughts. It's literally an endless canvas, so you can zoom out as far as you want and have all your ideas on one giant board, or then split things into separate boards. So for example, right, this is my board that only has the information for my setup ideation, and then I can from here switch to my desk, which is more like the working area where I have currently some book notes from the Borgman book that I've read, or like the shortcuts for Scrintal, because I still need to learn all of them. But yes, that's the general idea of using this endless canvas together with individual docs that you can then just open up and then edit just like you're used to with normal docs. I even have a full tutorial on how to build a Zettelkasten in Scrintal, link for that in the description. And Scrintal has also given me a 10% discount code for you, so check them out with a link in the description. And now, back to replacing a multi-billion-dollar company with Notion. How can people now book an availability or a time slot? To start with, we quickly need to add a new property here in order to format this time and availability nicely. So we will go in here, click on plus, click for formula, and then we call this display time. And then into the formula, we go and basically want to just extract the start and end time so we can show that to people when they book the slot. All right, in order to do that, let's take date start. So that takes the first part of the value and of the time slot. And then we want to format this. So the drill, this works super similar to what we plan in Make. Format date, and the way we want to format it is we want to have the hours and the minutes. And then we want to that, like separate that from the second part of the time, right? Probably with space dash space. And then again, we do the same thing. So we do date end, take the time slot. We will do format date. And we will have HH:MM. And if we done it all correctly, we click on OK, and we should now get here. Yeah, perfect. We see, okay, so 3:30 to 4 our time slots. Amazing. With that done, we can now build our booking page. To do so, I will just go up here and type /page. We will call this our booking page, and then we will create 2 columns. And actually, we want to probably turn on full width so we have a bit more space to work with. All right. Then we call this book now, exclamation mark. And on the other side, we will have like our availability. Now we can, of course, style this nicely, right? We can add a few things like dividers, context, and so on and so on. Our logo, it's a Notion page, right? So the sky's the limit. But for now, let's just add in our calendar. So we will take our availability. We will create a new view. It will be a calendar. Move myself. And on this calendar, we probably want to show it by the week, just to make it a bit easier to see. And then what we need to do is we need to go in, and under properties, we need to turn on display time. So now we have our different slots here right in the calendar. And of course here it's quite full because we have all days of the week with all the slots. Can of course add more icons to make it more visually pleasing, but it's a good starting point, right? I can also like give it a bit more space by adjusting like this maybe. Perfect. And now we see we have all different slots and always the different time available. Now that's the starting point. But of course we need to later build some logic so that the ones that are actually used disappear. But that's it for now. Now we need to figure out how the book now part should look like. For that, we need to add a third tool to our stack, Tally. Tally is an absolutely amazing form builder. In fact, they're my go-to form builder. And one of the reasons for that is that they have an incredibly generous free plan. So again, you can build this for free. And on that free plan, they have a ridiculous amount of features. Really super, super cool. Now, it works also very similar to Notion, so you shouldn't have any issues to get familiar with it. So let's just go in there and build our quick booking form. So let's call this, book a call with me, whatever you want to title it. Press enter, and just like in Notion, we can have 2/ commands to do add things. So the first thing that we probably should do is we should collect their name. So in that case, we will do question plus a short answer, like what's your name, question mark, and then we will go in here and have a second one for the email. So again, like question plus email, what's your email, question mark, and then last but not least, they of course need to book time. So we do question plus date, which day, and then last but not least, the time. So again, question plus time. Now, of course, what time? And of course, here you'll then see that the Calendly workaround is not as smooth, of course, of the normal Calendly experience. In Calendly, you can just click on the thing and then book directly. In Notion, we could let a person click in there and add themselves there, but that would then expose maybe some other information that we don't want, right? We don't want them to see other people who book with us. So in this case, we then would have to ask them, to fill out the date and fill out the time. So we can just add some context, please pick a date from the right that has some availability. And then here, same, please enter the start time or the slot. Actually, maybe it's even better than instead of asking them for a start time, because then we would need to write something in here, please type, something like this, right? And it might be hard that they do the right thing. So let's actually delete this one, and let's do maybe a multi-select. So we do like a question with multiple choices, and what time slot, please pick one that is available. And then here, what you can do, you can sort of hard code the values in, right? So we have like this to 3:30, we have 3:30 to 16, we have 16 to 16:30, and we have 16:30 to 700. Again, right, like this then depends a bit on how you want to do it. You could definitely do like where they just enter the time and then you ask them to please put in the time in the right way. But this one, if you have like limited time slots per day, might be the easier version, because you can ensure that people put in the time in the right format and don't mess anything up. Once we're done with the form, we can just click publish here, and then we're going to grab that link, and we're going to head over back to Notion, and we can embed it here. So now create embed, and we see our tally form pops up here on the side, and we have it automatically showing most of the entries, and we can like expand it a bit here to the bottom, so we see everything at a glance. And yeah, oops, I think the E, that's one option that we need to remove. So let's just head on back over there, remove the E option, that's not an option, publish, refresh, and there we have it. All right, so now we have our basic booking site available, where we show on the right side the calendar, and on the left side we show the form. And the booking process is super simple, right? Someone typed in their name, so hey, I'm Matthias, hello at matthiasprime.de. Now which date, right? So, and here of course, like again, that's like where it's a little less easy to use than Calendly, but still pretty cool. We can go in here and say, okay, what slot do we available? Let's say Wednesday. I want to go here Wednesday 24th, and I want to go for the 3 to 3:30 appointment. And of course, for the final version, right, I would add here more text that they see here more options and might be visible here, so they need to check that they find the right one. And then we just click on submit. Now, this just gives you this generic thank you for completing this form one, but in Tally, what we can also do, if we're in the edit mode, right, we can just go down here and say, okay, / thank you. And then we get a thank you page options, and here we could then have something in like, heading 1, thanks a lot for requesting a slot. I'll send you an email with the meeting details in a few months. All right, now the basic workflow is pretty much ready. All that's left at this point is a little bit of backend magic. First, we need to build now the next scenario in Make to get the information from tally into Notion. And for that, we start again by pressing the plus button, then we look for tally. And for tally, we have this watch new responses option, and here we need to create a webhook. But the tool does pretty much everything for us, so we just will label it. So we call this new booking request Calendly. I have already my connection here, otherwise you click on add. And then for the form ID, I just pick the form that I just created. Click on save, wait a second, and then we'll pull in the details. Now, let's just run this once so we see how it looks when something gets pulled in. So I go back to Notion, right? I will refresh this page, and then I will book another meeting. So again, Matthias, hello at matthiasfrank.de, date tomorrow, the one at 3 o'clock. And then we'll submit this. Oops, click on submit. Perfect, thank you for completing this form. Nice. So I just saw also seeing that I have like starting from 3, whereas here it's starting from 2, but it doesn't matter. We'll work with that. We'll adjust our availability to match the form. All right, so now it got put in, and we see under the fields, we have the different questions and we have the different responses. So the first thing that we can then do is that we can simply add this to Notion. So let's go quickly back to our main page here, and we have the bookings, right? So let's actually add here a field, a text field for that we call chosen date. So this can actually be a date property. And then let's get also a text property, and let's call this chosen time. All right. Now in Make, we can now go to Notion. So search for Notion, and we will create a new database item. And we'll ask it to please go into my sandbox connection. And here, let's look for the, what was it called? Bookings database. Bookings, okay. And whenever we get a response from tally, we want to add that as an entry to the database. So let's go ahead and let's say, okay, name will be what's your name. The chosen date will be the which date property. And then the email is this email. Availability we want to do for now. And then chosen time will say, okay, this will be the time slot that we have here. All right. Okay, so let's just again click here on run once and make sure everything works properly. So we'll go back to the booking page and again, just enter some details. Matthias, hello at matthiasfrank.de. The date will be the 24th and still this appointment. Okay, let's submit. Let's wait here for a second. Okay, it got dropped in. Success. So now let's check how it looks on here in Notion. We have a new booking from Matthias. Hello at matthiasfrank.de with the chosen date and the chosen time. This is already pretty neat, right? We can already say, okay, like here's my availability and I get my booking request. But of course, I want to now make sure that it actually gets connected to the right time slot and that time slot is then no longer available for other people to see on that screen. So in order to do that, we need like actually a few more properties. And the first property that I want to create is here like a checkbox. Should we get a checkbox? Yes, we can. Let's create a checkbox here and let's call this arrow. Right, so just like in case someone like selects a time, for example, that is no longer available because we can't enforce it on the front end. All right, that's that. And then let's head back over here. And now what we want to do is we want to go again to Notion and now we want to search. We want to search basically the matching time slot in the other database. So we will look for availability. That's the name of our database. And in here, once it has loaded, we want to find the entry that matches these conditions. So we want to make sure that the time slot date here. Actually, wait, we need to break it down. Sorry, one more thing. We need to also go in here and make sure that we have a chosen date in the same format. So for that, we can just go in here and let's add a formula property. Let's call it clean date. And what we're going to do is we will take the chosen date and then do our format date operation that we already know. And we'll format it as day, month. Doesn't really matter what you put in there. Just important that you put the same formula then up here, right? So in both of them, we want to format the date in the same way because here we have the date with time, right? So we can't compare these against each other. So let's take time slot, let's take format date, and let's take day, month, year. All right. Now with this setup, we'll be able to go back to make and compare the tier and search. So let's take a quick look. So the first thing that we want to make sure is we have two conditions. First, clean date, and then the formula string, so down below the formula string equals options should equal the string from before. So if I move myself out of the way quickly, here what you need to map is from the create a Notion database item, right? We want to be able to say clean date, please pick that string. That's the first condition, right? That's how we figure out that name. And then the second rule is that on that day, we of course want the one where the time slot matches. So we can take the display time formula, and here again, this is text, and it should formula text. So go down to string formula equals, and that should equal the chosen time that we have here. So 3 to 3:30. All right. And then the last part of the process is to connect these two entries. So we add one last Notion thing. This should be updated database item. And here we want to go in and say, okay, from the availability, please pick that one entry that we just found and connect it. And if everything works, then we'll have the nearly automated backend ready. So database item, the one that we just found, right? So here, the page ID. And we want to make sure that bookings, that we map that to the item that we created previously. And you see what wherever you hover over it, always like that one starts to pulsate, so you can figure out which of the steps you're actually looking at. So here. All right. So now let's save this and have this run once and see whether it works if we book an appointment. So let's go back to booking, book another one, Matthias, hello at matthiasfrank.de, which day? Well, please on the 24th. And I would like to have the appointment at 3 to 3:30. Click on submit, see whether it runs through here successfully. All right, that looks good. And now we can check that it actually has connected by going back here to our page, and we see, okay, Matthias booked slot number 3 on the 24th, 3 to 3:30. Perfect. So this part of the process works. Now we just need to make sure things are not booked twice, because currently what would be possible is someone else goes in, books the exact same thing, and we have two meetings. And of course, we need to avoid it. The first thing that we do in order to do that is that we go here and we make sure that on this availability page, we don't show things that have a booking. So we go in here and say filter, add advanced filter. Please make sure that you don't show anything where bookings is not empty. So only the things that are empty. And we see the one slot there disappeared, the one at 3. So that already works. So now we don't see it there anymore. And then we just need to make sure that if someone, right, because we can't enforce this here, unfortunately, right now, we don't have a way to link it to the availability. But we can enforce on the back end that nothing gets booked. So let's say here in our search objects, we have a third condition for search. The third condition for search is that in this other one, the bookings relation is empty. So here we go down to relations, and then we say booking should be empty. And then here under the these options should be empty true. And then we can click on OK. And now we just need to handle what happens in case it, it actually, we have two things. So we go in here and we add a router and we add two paths. And the second one will be that we, again, in Notion, update a database item. In this case, we want to update something on the booking end. So we will look here for bookings. Okay. Wait 1 second, database item ID, and here we can now say, okay, from the from the created items, right, from here where we created the database item, we want to make sure take this item ID and then take on error, and then we have it indicated that this one, tries to take a slot that is already taken. And we just need to set up the filter, and the filter will be, well, go this route if in the previous step, let's call this already booked. If in the previous step you didn't find a time slot, right? So let's go here and say page ID does not exist. And then the other one can be the fallback route. Okay. And this also actually handles the situation that they pick a date on which there are no slots altogether, right? If it's a Saturday or Sunday in our scenario. Perfect. Now, Calendly also checks your calendar for appointment collisions and removes these time slots. In theory, we could also connect your Google Calendar or Outlook calendar with this whole automation, and then whenever you have a new appointment, it checks against the time slots, and if there's any collision, it removes them. But that's fairly complex and this video is already getting long, so instead what we're going to do here is a much easier solution. We simply time block our calendar. So let's say you want to take calls on Tuesday and Thursday afternoon between 2 and 4 p.m. Well, in that case, simply add a recurring meeting block to your Google Calendar, as a time block there, so that you never have anything colliding there. That does the trick in the beginning, and if you want to get more fancy with this automation later on, you can always do so. This setup is already pretty cool because it allows us to show our availability to someone, they can book a meeting, and then that availability will automatically disappear. But now we need to take it up a notch and also make sure that we create a meeting and send that email to the person. So how do we do that? Well, we just build on top of this automation. So we go, after you created this database item, please create now, automatically send an email and create a meeting and then create send an email. To do so, let's click here on plus, and in my case, I will going to use Google Meet, but you can use Zoom just as well. So Zoom has the same endpoint here, so it works just the same. So in my case, Google Meet, create a meeting. I have my account already connected. Otherwise, click on Add to authorize yourself. Then I will pick my calendar, and for the name, this will be meeting. And then first I take their name. So let's go down to where we created the database item, right? We have the name of the person. So we have here the name of the person who booked it. And then I just put this and then here it's right. So meeting of them with me. The start date will be the start date that we can pull from the entry that we found here, right? So on this, we have the slot. So we can go to time slot and have a start date. And the end date will be the time slot and the end date. So that means we don't need to do any additional calculations, right, to figure that out. And then we can choose whether we want to send a notification. So we could just do that here through that. But we might want to automate it and customize it. So we actually say don't send any notification, don't do a reminder, don't do recurrence, and just accept it. All right, that's that. And then last but not least, let's send the email. So again, click on plus and then look for the email tool. For email, you have a bunch of options. You can use just like Gmail, that works. But if you have a private Gmail, not a paid one, then it's a bit tricky to set up the authorization. I'll leave a link to that in the description. So in this case, let's actually just use mail. So this is the built-in email module. Here it's much easier to authorize your email via the usual things. So we go to send an email. I will pick my main email that I send things from. Whoops, here. Is that, no, this one, a lot of different ones, and we want to send it to the person who just booked the meeting here, right? So we go down and pick the email, and we might maybe also want to send it to ourselves. So in this case, I could always send like a backup to myself to remind myself that this happened. For the subject, new meeting booked, exclamation mark. And then here in the content, we can just create an HTML email. Now, if you don't know how to write HTML emails or HTML text, the easiest way is to just go to ChatGPT and then type in the email that you want to send, and then ask it to format it nicely as an HTML email. But basically what you need to do is, since it's HTML, you need to wrap everything in HTML text. So to go on a new line, right, you always need to have this like key. So let's just write a very simple one. And let's say booking confirmed, exclamation mark. Then close this line like this. And we can just copy this and add it a few times. So we say, okay, booking confirmed. Here's your meeting link. And then we can pull in from the Google Meet event, right? Like the link. So let's see, where is that? Quickly need to search for it. Oops. The event HTML link, that should be it, because I haven't run it through, so we don't see the actual values, but that should work. We'll test in a second, and then we just put, like the date. We can pull from here, so we have our clean date, right? So we take clean date, this one, and then we take time, and again, just like wrapping it all in P so that they're on separate lines. Date, the time slot, where was it? Here under the create database one, chosen time, and then last but not least, like a nice see you there message. see there. But of course, you can customize it however you want. All right, perfect. Let's test it. So I click run once, I go back to Tally and I'll say, my name is, let's say Steve. Steve wants to have a meeting with me, but here's my email. So hello, and here's Frank.de. Which date? Let's pick the 25th. And let's say this time we want to pick the one at 3:30. And then we submit. Now, let's see what happens. If it correctly creates a meeting and sends an email, looks good. And there we have it. This is the confirmation email. So booking confirmed. Here's your meeting link, date, the time. See you there. Okay, I forgot to write actually time there in front of it. But looks like we pulled in the correct link and we have on email with a confirmation here. And everything is ready. So there you have it. This is the complete workflow that you need to basically replace Calendly in your Notion. Now, of course, there are a few extra edge cases that you can handle. First off, you probably want to send an email here as well if something goes wrong and tell the person, well, sorry, it looks like you booked, like a slot that isn't available. Please try again. And you probably also want to go on the telephone, right, and customize the things there a little bit to make sure that they have enough context, right? So when they're on this booking page, you walk them through the way it works with the slots, and please pick one that's available. Don't pick something else. All these little things, but the basic functionality is there, right? We can just go back here and see again. So we have Steve, the meeting with Matthias Frank, picked slot 4 on this date. And of course, one other thing that you probably want to do is you want to turn this into a proper dashboard. I'll have that done in the template link below. But yeah, there you have it. I think Calendly Notion, it's definitely possible. Oh, and I just realized that this is actually all in one automation, which means we have in total 2 automations, one to create the bulk availability and one to do the bookings, which means you can schedule both, even on the free plan. So hit the schedule button here. This one is just immediately as data arrives, so whenever Tally triggers. The other one, as I explained, you schedule it for like once a week or once a month, however you prefer it. And then all of this runs fully on autopilot to create this Calendly clone in Notion for free. Again, if you need the templates, check out the link in the description. Same with the blog post. And if you have any other questions remaining, please feel free to ask them down in the comments. And there you have it, a Calendly clone in Notion. Sure, it has its limitations, but it's pretty cool what you can whip up in just a few minutes inside of Notion. And of course, you can easily adapt this approach to your specific needs. In fact, I just very recently used a similar way to build a capacity booking system for a client. For that project, I also used my so far favorite Notion hack of 2024. In case you haven't seen that one, I strongly recommend you watch this video next. Just click here and I'll see you in a second.